Welcome to the KR Films Entertainment channel. Today I'm going to explain an action sci-fi horror film called Cold Skin. Spoilers ahead, watch out and take care. We are never very far from those we hate. For this very reason we shall never be truly close to those we love. The haunting thought of the young Englishman go on and on as he set sail for a remote south of landing island to work as a meteorologist while his thoughts drown him down. Captain Axel approaches him and lights a cigarette, telling him that they're almost there. In September 1914 they finally arrive on the island where no one greets them. The man had been sent to replace another meteorologist stationed at the island, but there seems to be no sign of anyone. Captain Axel accompanies the young man to look for the previous meteorologist to ensure he's safe. They come across a lighthouse and knock on it, but no one answers. The young man forces the door open and finds the only other person on the island, Grunner, the signal technician, who greets them both coldly. When Captain Axel asks about the former weather official, Grunner answers that the man they're looking for died from typhus. Grunner seems unbothered by their presence and walks around nude. Irritated Captain and Axel and the young man leave the lighthouse. When Captain Axel bids him goodbye, the man wanders around the island as he deems life ahead of him there. Like the previous weather official, he must dwell into the intensity and direction of the winds for 12 months before some replaces him. When he returns to the cabin to fix his things, he finds the previous meteorologist's diary revealing his name is Aldo. Inside he sees these sketches, a photograph of Aldo's wife, and even a lighthouse drawing with strange creatures beside it. The next morning he finds strange rock circles on the sand. He then heads near the coast with the telescope to start work. As he picks through the binoculars, he sees the naked man during a stretch as preparation for a long day of doing nothing. That night while he's reading, he hears wrestling outside his door, to which he thinks as Grunner. However, the noises get louder and louder with scratching and ground silences. Then suddenly a reptilian hears the pews at the bottom of the door, which he immediately steps on, causing the unknown creature to get agitated. When he hears more, he hides under the floorboards. While they try to enter his cabin, they attack his place but notice that there's no one inside. Where the footsteps stop, he looks through a small hole of the floorboards door. The creature peeps through as well, causing him to poke its eye with a knife. Feeling afraid, he locks himself underground for the whole night. He calls Grunner the next day, pleading to be let into the lighthouse, but Grunner refuses. Determined to fight, he heads back home and spends the whole day reinforcing it with a newfound rifle among the bag into the cabin. The man feels ready to fight against the unknown monsters. The night comes and the swarm of beasts start appearing from the darkness, slowly approaching the cabin. He braces himself as he shoots them one by one. Eventually has no choice but to start a fire, since there is simply too many to handle. The fire makes them flee, but it burns the cabin. He runs away from his burning house. Fortunately it rains before the cabin completely burns down. The following day he sees Grunner leave the lighthouse and discreetly follows him down to the rocks. When he is about to ambush Grunner, a blue female sea creature attacks him and he points his gun at her. Grunner stops them from shooting her by showing she is vulnerable. The young man takes advantage of offering Grunner some of the supplies in return for shelter. Grunner then calls the man a friend for the sea creature to acknowledge him as one. A little while later they head into friends' cabins. Gather his supplies. He realizes that the previous weather official didn't die from typhus but from the sea creatures. However, Grunner tells him that they need to head back to the lighthouse since it's nearing sunset and the creatures might attack. They leave the supplies into the beacon, and after a long walk, Friend passes out. One morning, Friend is awakened by the female sea creature licking his hand trying to heal his burns. It turns out that he's been asleep for 2 days. Friend then finds Grunner and takes an inventory of their ammunition and explains to him that the creature, which he calls a toad, is like a dog who will not abandon her master no matter how cruel he is. Friend gazes at on her, fascinated by her existence, giving her the impression that she is different from the others. However, Grunner warns him not to trust her entirely, believing that her silent and calm personality hides evil intentions. Grunner then shows Friend move off the lighthouse and take him up to the top. Friend wonders why Grunner chose to stay on the island when he had the opportunity to leave when Friend arrived. However, Grunner tells him that he will not ever come back to the civilized world now that he's a master of his own destiny. Still, Friend tells Grunner that he will come aboard when he sees the next ship come by, to which Grunner wish him good luck. Later that day, friend contemplate how a few days of isolation recently had changed him. As he fixes things, he's surprised by the creature's presence, but still he observes, or as he ignorantly eats a candle. As is trying to explain to her the use of a candle, Grunner calls him up, commanding him to bring his rifle. That night Fred watches Grunner as he prepares for the attack. The older man instructs him what to do and fires the flare gun, which signals the beginning of a long night. On the other hand, while the female creature wails into the sky, a crowd of sea creatures barrels towards them and Grunner starts shooting. However, friend feels overwhelmed as he remains in his position and slowly walks backwards until he passes out. Grunner is left alone fighting the appalling swarm of sea monsters. The following day, Grunner is enraged at friend's ineffectiveness, telling him to fetch water instead. Friend then gets the water, and when he comes back, he hears a pounding and wailing and groan his room. Into his surprise, he hears Grunner thrusting himself into the sea creature. He then him. Media it leaves. Later that day, group and friend eat lunch and awkward silence. Friend cannot confront him as he feels guilty and uncomfortable at the same time. However, Grunner breaks the tension as he bangs the table, telling friend that he only has one last chance left. Then I grid or catch the attention of the creatures as he takes the flare gun when the monsters appear. Your friend is frightened again, cause a Grunner to lock friend outside on the balcony, leaving him to fend for himself against the monsters. Despite hearing gunshots and friend's pleas outside, Grunner falls asleep. As the sun rises, Grunner is surprised to see friend alive, covered in blood, gazing blankly at him. Months pass and the two men get into a routine when the creatures attack several nights in a row, forcing them to keep vigil. Days are always the same, nights are getting longer, and only nature keeps them sane. They manage to coexist with friends' everyday task is to fetch water while Grunner maintains their weapon. One day, friend speculates that the creature are returning to the lighthouse to reclaim the female sea creature. However, he still wonders why she allows for species to get killed and why they don't attack on some nights. Grunner doesn't care as to why the creatures come and plans to exterminate them all. Later on, friend visit his old faded cabin to reclaim some of his belongings, only to discover how he has changed his upper parents. As he looks at himself in a mirror, he trims his beard, hoping to have some sense of his old self. On his way back to the lighthouse, he comes across a massive whale skeleton and picks up a piece. Still, there are no attacks that night, making him believe that the loss between the fighting are often worse than the battles themselves. Still, they take advantage to prepare for the next attack. While friend wanders around, he sees the creature and approaches her for the first time. As he touches recalled skin, he grows to like the strange being and gives her the name an heiress. Well, Grunner uses her for his ads as a servant and sex slave. One evening, Grunner invites friend to play chess. As they play, the young man shares his observations and hypothesis on the existence of the sea creatures. However, Grunner asks him to shut his mouth and play, urging friend to perform a checkmate or that. Picks up his gun and pointed towards the young man's direction as he perceives a creature behind his back. It turns out the sea monsters are already on the attack. They run into the higher point of the lighthouse as more and more monsters arrive. They fight with their rifles but are getting overwhelmed as the attack came too sudden. Still, they decide to go up to the lantern pane where the light illuminates. Unfortunately, Grunner is badly beaten on the foot as he flees upstairs after locking themselves inside the pane. They spend the night of there while the creatures try to reach them through the glass partition, begging that this is his end run or seems a tragic love song until the sun rises and the monsters leave. That morning, an heiress takes care of Green has been foot as she sticks her tongue into the wound. They cannot survive another war as they are running out of supplies, ammunition, and will later that day. Friend receives a ship from the distance. While he rooms, he immediately runs inside to get the flare gun, afraid of having no one to hate Grin or restrains friend as he's about to shoot, pinning him to the ground. An heiress tries to protect friend, which enrages Grunner, causing him to walk out with the flare gun. Feeling frustrated, friend yells at Grunner, telling him that he's afraid to be left behind and finally alone. A little while later, friend finds a way to communicate with the nearest by showing her a boat that he carved out of bone, hoping that she would understand. The nearest then leads him to an abandoned rowboat on the shore away from the lighthouse. At the lighthouse, the young man tells Grunner about the boat, but Grunner says he knows about it, informing him that a Portuguese man used it to get away from a shipwreck. But the creatures killed him. He also claims of the ship's cargo container dynamite, but he assumes that they're all waterlogged. Meanwhile, friend is interested in diving into the shipwreck with an atmospheric diving suit, but Grunner disapproves, telling friend that what he's proposing is a suicide mission. One afternoon, young man paints the robo with hopes of making it work. He then hears a howling from the distance, only to find the nearest enjoying a swim nearby. As he removes his clothes, he slowly approaches her as if he's going to kiss her, unbeknownst to friend and an heiress. Grunner is watching. Back to the lighthouse while friend is reading a book. Grunner hands him a diving suit and changes his mind after witnessing what they did on the pool, secretly hoping that friend will die in the attempt to jealousy. The following day they roll out to the shipwreck using the boat. The young man explains a rope tug is their only way to communicate while friend is underwater, telling Grunner that he will tug the rope 3 times. If he needs air supply, he then wears an old diving suit, searching for the crates carrying dynamite while Grunner controls the string from the boats, while a friend finds the container and immediately hook them up. After hooking up several small boxes, friend finds an infant sea creature picking through his suit, causing him to fall. He tucks the rope and starts to panic as more of the creatures surround him. Grunner is watching the rope on the verge of abandoning friend. However, as the young man releases himself from the suit and swims up into the boat, where Grunner immediately helps him up. When they return home, they immediately check the crate and discover that only one box among the others contains explosives that are dry enough to use. The winter is coming. Friend and Grunner devise a plan to entice as many creatures as possible into the lighthouse before detonating the plant dynamite in hopes of scaring them away. However, that night no one attacked. 3 weeks passed in the blink of an eye, and Grunner is getting impatient. While waiting for the big attack, friend finds Grunner freezing outside, still waiting in desperation for the creatures. Friend asked him to go inside and defuse the detonator for a while. One time, friend is waiting for an heiress, his cat, for their lunch. However, Grunner discovers that she brings starfish instead of fish. He kicks her, also blaming her for telling her kind about their plan to scare them. The angry man grabs friend's shirt, telling them that their new plan is to leave the door open, luring them in for an ambush. That night, friend leaves the door open while watching it. Grunner takes the upper ground, preparing to detonate the dynamite. They've been waiting for hours and it seems like they're not going to attack them. Following friend's speculation, Grunner drags on. There is beside him, forcing her to wail, assuming that it would attract the creatures. Meanwhile, a sea creature attacks friend at the main door. He manages to get away from them, but more creatures are come. Again, he rushes upstairs while informing Grunner that they are now inside the lighthouse. The creatures attack, but Grunner cannot get the explosives, causing front to sprint at the top of the lighthouse and reconnect the detonator. An explosion occurs, killing many sea creatures. Feeling unsatisfied, Grunner goes for a second set of explosives nearer to the lighthouse, knocking friend and himself out. When friend wakes up the following day, he immediately searches for greater and wakes him up. The young man is relieved when Grunner moves and starts singing a song, which he joins this time. Meanwhile, there is massive chaos around the beacon. Grunner uses a spear to finish off the wounded and dying toad on the beach. After seeing one of the dead creatures wearing a necklace, friend believed that this pieces are more civilized than Grunner portrays them. Grunner grabs the pendant and hurls it into the sea, feeling enraged. Later that evening, while they watch for the next attack, friend hears an heiress and several other creatures mourning the loss of their species. Grunner approaches him and explains that he rescued and theirs is a baby trapped in a net years ago, believing she owes him her life. An heiress vanishes. Big Grunner assures him that she will crawl back as she always does. Friend seems to regret what they did, but Grunner remains cold and has no remorse towards the creature's death. One morning, friend circles the stones in the sand and places the carved bone in the middle, hoping to get rescued. On the other hand, Grunner is still preparing for an explosion to continue scaring away the beasts, but there is still no attack that evening. One time, his friend fixes Grunner mess while the old man sleeps. He discovers a wedding photo of Grunner with the words "Love, Love, Love" written on the back. He recognizes that the woman in the image is the same as the woman in the diary, realizing that Grunner is the former weather official and the Grunner isn't entirely devoid of human compassion. As a result, friend erases his day, counting as he understands everything is forgotten, including the very reason for his visit to work. There is no work done other than to stay alive. Friend then goes into the short sets, remove the carved boat when he sees a child sea creature suddenly approach him. Behind the child is a heiress who appears more calm. Verdant and bolder together with her troops friends notices that they want a truce but Grunner does not and only wants a nearest back but she refuses. He repeatedly echoes no one leaves Grunner while he walks back to the lighthouse. Suddenly Grunner fires a flare at the child fatally striking him in the chest and nearest looks at for Brent with doubt and disappointment leaving him alone. As Grunner continues to fire at them, friend pursues him and after a struggle throws him onto the ground and stabs his leg. Enraged Grudor stands against the upper hand and tries to murder him with an axe but friend calls him by his real name telling him that he's not a murderer. Grunner comes to a pass drop says acts and out. As love as if the man regains his former self. He goes outside and looks at the starry night where the sea creatures slaughter him. A few months later the next ship arrives to bring over French replacement. The captain mistakenly calls him Grunner upon witnessing a shocking state of existence which he doesn't bother to correct. Grunner leaves friend with an unwavering legacy of taking his place. The young man keeps his role thinking that this is the peace that he was looking for. The new Grunner stands by the balcony staring at silver boats while in nearest runs into the sea where she swims freely. From one hell to another friend found salvation. A world war would signal the end of humanity as we know it, but he gets worse. He left one mysterious past behind, only discovered the same thing on an island he was fleeing seeking peace through nothingness, but in place of silence he found a monster-plagued inferno. In the end he finds peace after learning that there is no such thing as life without love, hope without love, or humanity without love. Subscribe to watch more videos like this, turn on notifications and leave a like, it really helps the channel. Thank you for watching.